joining today's webinar. We're talking about freight fraud. It's been the ongoing topic of the industry. So trying to build a fraud-proof brokerage is the main topic of today. And we're hoping takeaways from this webinar will be the latest in data on freight fraud in general, identifying theft and compliance gaps that brokers are seeing throughout their organizations. And we want to just kind of shed additional light on, just as this topic continues to evolve and the criminals get more savvy, we want to talk about, the most common ways to close some of these gaps right now, because it's changing every day. A lot of things that are tried and true, proven, that we'll talk about, but also just, experiences on what everybody's experiencing in the last couple quarters here. So today, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm Sean McGillicuddy. I'm with Tai Software. We've got Bo Carlton, the VP of Enterprise Growth at Highway. Obviously, Highway's been the premier tech on this freight fraud issue. Then we've got Reed Rivers and Talbot Turner from FreightFlex. So they're all joining us today. We're gonna ask a bunch of questions, and we're gonna hear their experiences and uncover these topics. But before we get into that, why don't we go ahead and let everybody do a quick intro. Bo, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Yeah, absolutely. Afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you taking some time. Bo Carlton. I've been with Highway a little over 2.5 years now. And all that time, I've gotten more texts in the last 3 days with this Guy Fieri situation from people outside the industry. Like, hey, is this, like, my mom was like, is this what you guys are actually out there doing? I'm like, finally, Guy Fieri could explain it better than I could, apparently, what's wrong with the industry. So excited to talk about it today.
An unlikely hero.
That's right.
Reed, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for inviting us to this. So, name is Reed Rivers. I'm the president at FreightFlex. We've started with Tai in 2021, and we've been a Highway customer since 2023. We're a freight brokerage. We're agency based, and we're really tech forward. And we've integrated a lot of these solutions that have helped us with fraud in the industry. So we're excited to kind of share with you guys, what we've seen and how we're tackling it and how these guys have helped us out.
Awesome. Thank you, Reed. And then Talbot, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on here. My name is Talbot Turner. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations for FreightFlex. I've been with FreightFlex for almost 3 years now. I've been in the industry for almost 15. But I'm excited to be on here, excited to talk about this. Tai and Highway are the two most important tech products that we have on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. And we appreciate you jumping in. I think for most brokers that are on today, you guys will be sort of the stars of the show, because they want to hear the experience and what you've done and what's worked, right? And some of your experiences. So we'll go ahead and just kind of kick this off with a section that's just in general about fraud and the facts that are going on today. We'll start off with Highway has a freight fraud index that we can show. And so if you don't mind, Bo, why don't we go ahead and just break this down and give us sort of the stats that you're seeing the growth of this.
For sure. We'll talk a little more about kind of what each of these entails, which is exciting. But, second quarter, we saw a lot. There was a lot of activity. We're seeing a lot of trends where, whether it's people coming in from other countries, right? You see that big number on the left side, 700 carrier users from 40 different countries are trying to get in from outside the United States, obviously, and they're being blocked. We're seeing more from India, Pakistan, Serbia. Those are not necessarily new, but just the rate in which these attacks are happening, whether it's emails, phone calls, you see on the top right, unauthorized FMCSA contact changes. That's really, we are the ones kind of smoking those out, if you will. We see changes and we go to the carriers, hey, this was changed this week. Did you do that? And a lot of times they're like, no. And so that's a terrifying moment for that user, but it's nice that we're there to try to help them out on that front. But if you take nothing from this slide, it's that the attacks are amplifying and they're finding new ways to get into your system, whether it's through the phone or through the email, or in most cases now it's through the carrier's inbox, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this should put you guys on guard from a brokerage perspective, is that they are actively out there trying to get into your system and take your freight.
Yeah. And in general, I'll ask the Freight Flex folks, like, I mean, obviously you've done quite a bit to bulletproof yourself across this, but when you see these stats, like, are you experiencing like the, like seeing any of the increase, or is it been sort of, you've shielded yourself from it?
No, for sure. We're definitely seeing the increase. I mean, it's cybercrime is really what it is. I think that's kind of new for people, is to understand that it is cybercrime and not just stolen freight, where it's, a hijacked truck or, a hijacked trailer. And so cybercrime is complex. And there's lots of ways, like we interact, all of our systems, are on the web. And so, we're seeing any sort of attack vector that can be attacked. I guess, like, we're seeing an uptick in it. We saw a huge uptick in it from 23 to 24. I feel like in 2024, they got very sophisticated, and a lot of crime started kind of kicking off. And so, that's when we really started looking at our network and finding ways to secure it. But yeah, we've seen an uptick for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I guess this would be, Bo, this is what you were mentioning, but you see obviously the cyber attacks, the spoofing emails, double brokering continues to be an issue. What else, I guess, should we make folks aware of on this webinar for, like, where those increases are happening?
Yeah, you'll see in some of the specific vectors we'll talk about, is that it's just, they're doing what they can. These bad actors, we don't call them, these guys, carriers, because they're not carriers. They're criminals. They're bad actors. So what these guys are doing is they're trying to get you off the screen. They know that Highway's tracking everything that they do from when they're trying to get into these force their way into different accounts. They know that we can flag that aggressively, and often very, very early. So they're doing what they can to function outside of Highway and then try to come in over the top. And so there's a few specific ways that they're doing that, emails, things like that. But that's their goal, is they're trying to get the user off the screen as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, I guess that's the social engineering combined with the cyber attack aspect of it. I mean, we're like last year, or maybe it was the year before, where Vegas got hacked, and it was a total social engineering situation where somebody called in and said, well, my badge, I need a new badge, or something like that, right? Where they figured it out on LinkedIn. So you see stuff like that. But, asking Reed and Talbot a little bit about, what do you guys think are the schemes that are hitting brokers the hardest in 2025 so far?
Yeah, I mean, in 2025, I would definitely say that it's identity theft is what we're seeing the most recent. It all started with the double brokering scheme, where a lot of our shipments are booked over email. And so you have a carrier that emails inquiring about a load. They commit to the shipment at whatever rate we throw out. Sure, we'll do it. Sounds great. Let's get it rolling. Then they immediately go to market. They immediately go to double broker the load and say, we gave them a rate of $1,200. They go and offer it to another carrier at $3,000. And so they don't ever intend to pay that actual carrier. The game there was to see how many transactions they can do and how quick they can do it without it catching up, and, using the quick pay method, or just getting paid a little bit faster before that carrier can catch on to it, or we can catch on to it. So we actually turned off quick pay back in 2023 for that reason. But now we brought it back on with Triumph Pay handling the quick pay portion for us. Of course, that's being vetted a lot more meticulously than it was at that time. But, we brought on Highway around that time. That helped a lot against that. But then right after that, that was when the email spoofing came up. And, so then you have carriers that are emailing us from jmdtrucking@yahoo.com to jmdtrucking@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And, our guys are moving fast, and you're looking at this MC and you're saying, look, we have great lane history here. We have great history with this carrier. They're a solid carrier. You're checking them on Highway, you're checking them everywhere, but then you're moving too quick. You don't realize that email is just one letter off or one number added or a different domain. Yeah. And that's when we brought in the Highway add-in to Outlook, and that solved that issue for us for the most part there, because we're able to actually we get an alert in our Outlook inbox right away to say, look, fraudulent activities associated with here. This email doesn't match up. This is not a verified user. All of that good stuff. So that was a big fix for us there. But then along came in 2025, early 2025 is when the identity theft came in, and that's what we're seeing right now still. I mean, we've had a lot of success with, being able to prevent it over the last 6 months, knock on wood, but the identity theft portion it's a great carrier, great lane history again, the email checks out, everything's good to go. They're active in highway. And so we send the rate con on. And then we realized that, wait a minute, that carrier that we actually booked the shipment with had no idea about the shipment. This was a bad actor that took over the whole carrier's inbox. So that's when I think about 6 months ago, might have been a little bit before that, we added in load lock. And that's been our last protector against all of this. And so what load lock does is it links with the Tai system. It sends everything to a DOT highway email to where that specific carrier, the carrier that is associated with that DOT and that highway login can only access the Raycon through that. And, again, knock on wood, since we've had all these blockers up, and that final one, especially load lock, I think was the most important to all of this, that we've been successful.
Yeah. I'm just going to add on to that real fast. Is I think a lot of people work for large organizations or large brokerages where we have tech teams and software security packages. These carriers are small carriers with, call it 3 to 5 trucks in a small email account where they don't have security inside of their email like we do. And so a lot of our customers are like, how is the carrier's email getting hacked? That makes no sense. Well, we've all worked for large organizations where it's we've never had that happen, or it's very rare that we've had that happen. For your small guys, they don't have security within their email accounts like we do. And so they're easier targets for fraudsters. So it just makes sense that if you're a fraudster and you can hack a carrier's email, how many Raycons can you receive before that carrier finds out? It can be dozens, if not more.
Yeah. And what a bummer for the carriers too, because like you said, it's just so hard for them to, this industry is heavily driven by trucking companies that have maybe 5 to 20 trucks, and they don't necessarily have all the tech available to them that we see in the broker space, right? So being able to help your partners by spotting this stuff for them is actually really great for the relationships as well. And Bo, it sounded like you were about to add on to that.
Yeah, man, it's just I'm so glad you brought this up. Just because when it comes to compromised inboxes and email phishing, we sit in a position where we see a lot of activity both in our customer base and outside of it. Just the things that we hear and things that bubble up, and this one area alone, like I said, they're getting brokers are trying to do things off of the system, and so we have no way to control the digital hygiene of the carrier base. Who, if we're honest, they are getting links all day, every day that are totally legitimate, and so if they're used to clicking that, whereas we in an office building, if I see a link, I'm checking who sent it, where did it go, who's it from, I'll send it to my team, is this legitimate, whatever. We operate in 2 very different ecosystems, and so for a carrier, they're just so used to clicking links and giving information to folks, and so we're doing what we can. When we talk to a carrier who, they're the victim of somebody jumping into their inbox, we're going to try to help them get kind of a 2-factor set up on their side, walk them through what you got to do just so it doesn't happen again. But for you guys as brokers, if for those out there that are listening, if you're still sending Raycons out as a PDF, you are asking for someone to take your freight at this point, because the rate of inboxes that we see that are compromised is growing. Like you see on the screen here, it is, and these are just the ones that we see. These are just the ones that we've caught already. It's an enormous area, and it's caused probably 70% of the losses we've seen year to date. It's a huge piece. So you've got to send that more securely for sure.
And just for the audience on that Raycon, you have a PO number and an address to pick up. So if you go to that address and you give them the PO number to pick up that freight, they assume that's who's supposed to be picking up that freight. So when that Raycon comes across with all the information to pick up that cargo at the warehouse, your guys, they don't have any reason not to give it to the trucker that shows up. So if they can get a hold of that document, that one document's going to give them everything they need to load that truck and have it steal the freight. So when I started off saying it's cybercrime, it is truly cybercrime at this point. It's not stolen freight in an active theft environment. It's stealing a piece of paper and then using that piece of paper to load hundreds of thousands of dollars in cargo into that truck.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, that was kind of the pivots into our other topics here, which is like, the value of just losing one load in one of these schemes. For Reed and Talbot, can you talk a little bit about that? Like what, in the past, obviously this was a problem. You guys have closed a lot of the gaps. Like, I mean, and I know, Bo, you have a ton of information on this as well. We'll come to you after that, but like just in general, like what do you think is getting lost on the, on the average? Like, you get caught in one scheme, you lose one load. What's that costing a broker?
Yeah, I mean, we can't even put a number to it. I mean, it's customer relationships is absolutely the main thing that we're losing here. And I mean, I think we've done a good job as a company of protecting those relationships and hanging on to them as best as we could. But we've really opened up our checkbook. I mean, we pretty much paid for every single loss that's happened to try to hang on to customers. And then you still really you don't ever feel like you get back to a square one of where you were with that same volume and that same relationship that you have with the customer previously. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, absolutely, it's a major cost to us as a company, but it's really just, it's a tough market. The market's never been more competitive than it is right now. And so every single relationship and every single customer we have is extremely important to us. And anything that gets in the middle of that is losing us money.
Yeah. Reed, anything to add to that?
I mean, every single time it's been tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. So, I mean, you're not loading a truck, just put a number to it, and not saying customer specific on anything, but it's like, it is always, you're not loading a truck with $10,000 worth of goods. You're usually loading it with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods. So, and I'm sure you guys will get to it at some point, but these guys are sifting through Raycons for what they want. Is like, they'll find something, it's, hey, it's a load of Nike tennis shoes. I'm 100% going after that because I can get to it on the black market or anything that's easily traded on the black market. So it's prevalent enough that they're targeting commodities at this point, or they're sophisticated enough that they can target commodities. And so, I know the calls about Highway and Tai and the integration of these two things, but without these two systems funneling all of our carriers and our documents through these portals, it's the only way that we know that the document is going to the right person. Without that, it's a guessing game. And so, in 2024, we had, 3 stolen loads in this scheme that has happened. Since we've implemented Highway specifically and used the tool sets that they provide, we've had 0 stolen loads since then. And so the relationships that Tal talks about is like, for us, that is the most important part. It's how we pay the bills. And so we have to make sure our customers know that when they have freight with us, we're using the carriers that we know and we know we're connected to and we know we have a relationship with, and we're not introducing somebody that could potentially damage that relationship.
I think that, yeah. So go ahead if you want to add.
I mean, it's just, I love that. Yeah, there's, to a certain extent at this point, fraud is as a broker, fraud is a choice to a certain extent. Now you either choose to go through, the operational changes to implement the safeguards to keep it from happening, or you say, hey, we're going to choose to do, I don't want to interrupt the process that I've always had, so we're going to keep doing that and hope that works and just add some barriers over here. It works best from a highway perspective. It works so much more effectively for brokers that are bought in, and they choose to place barriers at every step within their flow by letting Highway ensure that, hey, the identity on the front end, if you want to send him a load on the TFX, like I'm going to know, we're going to tell you who that carrier is. When you're onboarding, when you've got them, they're assigned to the load, are they in range, are they overbooked, all the way through tracking on the back end, right? You kind of choose your exposure right now. And our goal is to, like the Freight Flex folks, like show you, hey, this is what we know about this carrier in this moment in time and historically. And it's worked well because, again, I think you said that like these bad guys are jumping into these carrier boxes and they're just going to sit and wait for the best one. A lot of these guys have been in for a long time. You can start to kind of walk the timeline back on when we think that guy probably got into your inbox. And he's not often going to take the first Raycon that pops in. He's going to wait for the liquor or the shoe, the electronics, and they are really, really good at casing the joint at a shipper's location, but also for you guys as a broker. They are watching your habits to see when are you a little looser, when are you moving too quickly, what lanes are you hauling? So yeah, they're sitting in these inboxes and just waiting for the right moment for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy how sophisticated it has gotten. It's just continued to increase as we add more tools, for brokers. And, I mean, some of the things that make this industry so much fun to me is that there's a lot of small businesses, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, but that's also what leaves, I guess, folks open and susceptible. I mean, I'm sure those carriers, same thing, the way you were talking about your customers, and you lose that one load and there's that dollar amount to the load, but there's the relationship side, right? And you can't even, very hard to quantify it. I'm sure like the carriers will tell you, they feel the same when they're working with brokers and they accidentally get caught in one of these things. And it's like, now they've lost your trust. Now you have to second guess every time you're going to them with a load, right? It's really a bummer because they're just, they're small businesses that are hustling and doing their best, and a lot of honest folks, but dealing with a ton of I mean, their insurance cost is already pretty high.
Man.
And this stuff, not that it's not high on the broker side, but, insurance on the carrier side is major. And so for them to have to pay out on a load and then become, make it very tough for them the following year to get cargo insurance again, or, you know what I mean? Because they paid out. So I guess in both, let me know if you want me to slide to any of these other things. I like that the conversation's just open. So don't, you guys jump in wherever, but I do want to pivot into a little bit more about same thing we're talking about, but just, for FreightFlex, there was a problem. You've obviously closed the gap significantly. Can you talk even beyond just, Highway and Tai, like what things have you implemented in order to stop yourself from these loads being a problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's really educating our team and realizing we had a problem. I mean, every time that a problem has come up, we wish that we picked one of these solutions a little bit sooner. I think we were already familiar with all of these fixes prior to actually taking them on. It wasn't like we heard about it and we're like, all right, we got to do it right now. We're like, do we really need it? I'm not sure if we need it. I think our team's really good. They're great operationally. We got this. And I think that's the case almost every time. We're like, dang it, well, we should have done it sooner. And Reed's probably laughing at me because Reed's always the first one to sign us up for the new tech. And our team's like, no. But just in general, I mean, it's educating our team, just looking for where we have holes in our operation and making sure that everybody understands like all the tools that we can use at all time, and maybe eliminating certain people from being able to access those tools and having one department that controls compliance or one department that can book loads, and just kind of eliminate as many variables as you can.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that and say, it used to be back in the old days of 2 years ago, the old days that you could have multiple people on your team working with carriers and doing a lot of the day-to-day transactional things. And what we had to stand up in 2024 was a compliance team where everything funnels through the compliance team to make sure that even though if we've worked with this carrier, we're going back through the vetting process, kind of making sure like the Outlook plugin, it shows up, it makes sure that the email hasn't been spoofed because that carrier's name and they have the signatures the same and you move super fast. And so outside of just implementing systems and the training that Tal's talked about, it's making sure that really everything funnels through a trained individual rather than back in the old days, everybody had the ability to kind of do their vetting as they saw fit.
Yeah, it really is a very, it's not a one, silver bullet solution. I think the training aspect of things is huge. I am seeing a lot of brokers do what you just explained in terms of the compliance department having a little more like single point of control over it, using Highway, being able to look at the carriers inside of Tai, right? But having one person who's verifying that and making sure, but to your point, it goes like all of your ops people have to be constantly, it's almost like one of these like safety in warehouses and stuff. It has to be talked about every week, right? So this fraud topic in terms of training, it has to be talked about every week. Here's what we're seeing. Don't forget to double check the links, or don't forget to verify that email is exactly the same email and not one letter off. And that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you take it back 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, our operators, we wanted to get the best price. We wanted to book a quality carrier on the load, make sure the load delivered on time, et cetera. Fraud and getting the load stolen really wasn't a concern at that time. It really wasn't. It was out there, but it was very few and far between. And now you have to kind of shift your operations teams. Like, look, I'm not even concerned of price as much as you just making sure we're booking a solid carrier on the load and we're protected in the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess on that note too, Bo, any recent stories of where Highway's been able to save a load from getting stolen or some kind of cyber attack?
Man, it happens a lot, and most of what we're doing is prevention, right? So if we can see that these emails have been compromised, or we're able to flag these contacts, the goal is that they never make it into your system at all. And so there's not this heroic, last second stop the truck before he gets there. It's, hey, this bad guy's he's not even on your radar at this point. That's the world that we're chasing with, the freight exchange that we rolled out, is that you start with a better carrier from the jump, right? But there have been plenty of situations of late where we get an inbound from a broker that's like, hey, this just feels weird. So something here that they brought in this other guy, and we're able to go through and do some fun things with, contact tracing, IP matching, ELD matching, things like that, to where there have been multiple examples just in the last week where we've been able to have that moment where it's like, hey, he's going to be there in an hour, get him off. We found that this guy's actually this guy. So it happens a ton here at Highway. This is what we take it really personally when a customer of ours loses a load, when it's something that we could or should have been able to stop, or feasibly could have built out the capability to flag whatever that was. That we take that very personally. So,
Bo,
man,
can you talk about how
there's a lot of them.
Bo, can you talk about how organized it is as far as like organized crime? Like, it's not just like a guy behind a computer. Like, it's because I've talked to Michael Grace, which is a Highway employee, and it's like it is very organized and very planned out.
Yeah, these guys. It's almost like no matter how many guys you get put in jail for these rings, they've got an endless supply of manpower, right? And so they are absolutely, like I mentioned earlier, they are guys who are in trucks casing the behavior at the warehouses. There are guys who are on the phone casing the behavior of your dispatchers, of your employees, of the loads that if you post them publicly, they are looking for your behavior patterns there. It is a full-on network of various rings and groups of people where this is all that they do. If only they could use their powers for good. But no, this is not just some random guy who woke up and saw the story on 60 Seconds and thought, or 60 Minutes, whatever, and thought he'd give it a run. These are career criminals with a lot of money and resources behind them to. They play the ROI game, right? Like, where is it worth for me to spend the most time to get those Nikes or this load of avocados or TVs, whatever it is? You can always tell. Very rarely, if this was just kind of a hack job, they would run off with bottled water more frequently. It's only by accident. It's only very rarely that you hear the story of, well, it was an electronics load, but it was all the packing materials for the next one, so we got away with one. That will happen, but it's pretty rare. So these guys are incredibly dialed into what they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable. And even like,
It is.
If you think all the way back to like Goodfellas, right? Like, I don't know if you've seen that movie. Like, it's the mafia, and they're like they're just like sticking up trucks, right? But they get tips on like the best loads and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like that's like back in the 60s or whatever, and this is like the very far advanced, because back then it was organized. Like, they knew which loads to go after, but they were doing it in a more like brute force kind of way. Today,
Sure.
You can't get away with that, but you don't have to either. You've got all these sophisticated methods for finding out where the best loads are, and how to just plan on stealing them. And I guess that pivots into for FreightFlex, like Highway doesn't seem like a nice to have anymore, right? Like, this is like this type of your overall tech stack, really, because you mentioned even the quick pay, and how you're using Tai with all of these, but like, your tech stack is not a nice to have anymore. Can you guys talk a little bit about like how it's a need?
How it's a huge line on the P&L. Yeah. I mean, we do love tech because the automation in brokerage, there's a lot of manual moving parts, but specific to this it's specific to even Triumph Pay, which is a sister or affiliated company. Is like, they're really not nice to haves anymore at all, because you cannot function day to day in your business without being able to move fast. That's just brokerage in general. It is a fast moving industry with a lot of things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. And so without these tools, if you wanted to do it manually, maybe there's a way, but it would slow you down. And so our tech has enabled us to move a lot faster. We're very tech focused with lots of tech integrations, but all of those integrations really help us move faster in a more secure environment. And so before this, we were using a different carrier onboarding software solution that's pretty common across the industry. And it was just sending the packet to the carrier for them to sign, so that they signed our broker carrier agreement, so that we had a contract with that carrier, just very common stuff. I mean, that is like peanuts compared to what you have to do today to make sure that you understand who you work with. And so, Highway is not even an issue as far as like, is there a need for Highway, and could we get around having Highway? We wouldn't be able to function without it. It is very integrated in our brokerage. All of our friends that are in the industry are all, we see each other at Highway conferences, et cetera. We sell Highway. When I go talk to customers, I explain to them why we use this software program, how it benefits them. And so, next to Tai, which is, both of our top software providers on this call, we couldn't function without either one. They both are very integrated in what we do.
Yeah. And I mean, just speaking more on our business as a whole in comparison to other brokers' business in the industry, we operate in a heavy spot market. We move a lot of spot freight. We're very transactional. We don't have the same lane from Iowa to Texas moving, 30 times a week or whatever it might be, running the same carrier on it over and over. We're going to the load boards a lot of times. It's a last minute opportunity. We move a lot of high value freight. We operate heavy in imports and exports. So, I mean, a lot of this is coming out of California, where we've seen 98% of any issues regarding stolen freight for us has come out of California. And so we kind of check all the boxes of things to be concerned about when it comes to fraudulent activities here at FreightFlex. And so, I mean, without Highway, we would, I don't even know if we'd be in business, honestly. I mean, but, at this point, really, I mean, without some of these blockers of it, we wouldn't be able to survive without it.
Man, so much of what you just referenced is that it's today. There's so many areas when we talk about bad guys, casing the joint and just looking for gaps in your process. Is that if you're moving loads out of Southern California and you're posting it and anybody can see it, even the guy who's just on a laptop overseas can see where you're posting all of your loads without having to confirm that he can actually haul that load. Like you were just inviting risk into your process. Like that's how bad guys get in the front door, is just with visibility and just a little bit of data, because they'll just start to piece those things together and wait for you to get caught sleeping.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking, Cal, about the spot quote market, I mean, there are a lot of any broker who's trying to grow, they're going to be probably pretty heavily in the spot quote market, because they're going after those. Hopefully they're going to win those clients, once they win a handful of spot quotes, hopefully they're going to get their foot in the door and go. But most brokers that are trying to grow, they're pretty susceptible to this. And I think, like Reed, you mentioned the line item, right? And it is tough. Like, I think that's even if you weren't thinking about tech, but you knew you had to like retrain the whole team and maybe add some people to help with this, or versus that maybe plus tech or one or the other, right? Like, no matter what, it costs money in order to protect yourself from these things. And I think it's tough for a lot of brokers to, sort of swallow that pill when it comes to just like redoing their infrastructure so that but it's so important to be able to move fast as a broker, right? You have, especially with the margins the way they are these days, like, I mean, and they continue to get squeezed. And if you can't do volume as a broker, it's going to be tough to survive. So if you have a bunch of hesitation in your process because you don't feel protected, I would find it very hard to grow as a broker. So it's almost like, you have to look at it. It's an investment. It's an investment in your ability to do speed and to do volume as a broker.
It's an investment. That's a great way of saying it. It's an investment.
Yeah, I mean, that was the conversation Reed and I and some of the other execs had at Freight Flex. Is like, do we want to add a few more people into this compliance role, or do we want to have Highway just do the job of what those people are going to be doing and do it better, and take the human error part out of the equation? And that was definitely a conversation prior to bringing on Highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about where do you introduce friction, right? Because like you were saying, Sean, it's like you can't go slow. You cannot go slow. Anything that slows down your process beyond what's reasonable is going to kill you. And so from Highway's perspective is we're going to create friction where we believe that there's a need for something to slow down right here. Something about what this guy's doing or what he's done or who he's related to or whatever it might be is telling us this guy needs to slow down because there's a lack of trust here. But our goal is to bring brokers and carriers together and just reintroduce some of that trust. They know who you are, you're a legitimate broker. And so when you are talking to them, it's a legitimate email coming to them. And then you can trust that it's a legitimate carrier. And when that happens, things can go really quick. There's no need to create friction when both parties are trusting who's on the other end. It's just about creating that friction where necessary so that everybody else can keep on cruising by. And that's that delicate balance that Highway is seeking to achieve with you guys.
Yeah.
Sean, do we have a slide on MCs being sold?
You may.
Yes, I think there you go. Look at
Is
you.
that the one?
There you go.
That's a good one too. I mean, just talking to the group that may or may not be familiar with how this stuff works is, your MC, your license to do business. If that trucker's going out of business, they're going to sell that MC. That was one we haven't talked about, but it's been, you're doing business with JB Trucking and you don't realize that the JB Trucking sold their MC. Well, guess who's buying that MC? Who do you think's buying that MC? The cartel or whoever's running this theft ring on the back end. And so you want to talk to that, Bo?
Yeah, for sure. This is one of the ones that's so hard to preempt if all you're doing is just pulling up a profile and looking at a carrier, right? These guys will, in many cases, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't report this to the Secretary of State, right? If I'm a guy who's selling my MC, usually they're going to know this is a good dude or this is a guy who's going to take my MC because I'm already in various different broker networks. I'm going to try to steal stuff. Those sellers will usually go to the Secretary of State immediately and get their name off of that company. Mm-hmm. The difficulty here is that while Highway will expose that for brokers to see, we'll show you Secretary of State changes when you look at the profile. There is no governing requirement across states on how that gets reported, when that gets reported, if that gets reported, right? So simply chasing Secretary of State model is not enough. It used to be the FMCSA email or phone number would change because that was really easy to get into. Well, we caught that. And so then these guys are just pivoting and trying to find different ways to get in. And so when they're selling their MCs, their goal is to change as little as they possibly can, get you off the screen and get you on the phone, right? That's the goal. And so from a Highway perspective, is that while the actual transaction of who's behind the keys, because a lot of times they get the email now that was associated with it, they'll sell the Gmail account. From a Highway perspective is, hey, it's really hard to tell who's on the other side of the screen. We've implemented other checks and verifications where we need to see their face and their ID, but that's all typically tied to other tools that we have to help protect different parts of your flow. So if you're just looking at the profile, man, that's going to be tough. But if you've got load lock in there as well, well, then I'm going to be able to tell you, hey, you booked it with this MC, but he doesn't actually have the trucks, right? Well, you booked him in a load in Kansas City and his last ELD was in Portland. We're going to tell you that. And so this is you can't just pick one defensive posture. You really do need to create, our goal is to make you the hardest target. And in order to do that, we're going to do as much as we can to tell you when something is off. But the play here with sold MCs and ownership changes is that there are so many little things that tip us off to that, that the more visibility we have, the better we can help you against it. Because you see here in this picture alone, it's ramping up. The market's tough. Folks are selling. They're looking for MCs that are inactive, or they're seeing truck counts go down or whatever it is, they're searching, right? And they're going to reach out to these folks. And we do a good bit of prevention on this side too, just keeping our ear to the ground, right? Who's out there looking to flip an MC and get ahead of it that way. But this is a really dangerous one for folks that aren't adequately covered. That's for sure.
What a bummer for like the legitimate trucking companies that are maybe they've got some experience, they're just getting started, and it is better from an insurance purpose to buy an MC number than it is to start a new one, because it costs you about probably 10 grand less per truck in insurance, right? So, but now, you could be seen as like a potential threat coming in, right?
Sure. And even if you're not a threat from our perspective, from a highway perspective, is like you guys as brokers, right? You have, hey, I'm not going to work with a carrier unless they've been in business for X amount of months. Sometimes it's 3, 6, 18, 12, like we see it across the spectrum. But when that ownership changes, as far as we're concerned, you should assume that is a brand new carrier, because you have no idea who that guy is. You have no idea what kind of operating behavior he's going to have. And so that's how we look at it, and how we recommend our customer base looks at it, is that guy just kind of reset as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I know we've been kind of just letting the conversation go because this has been great. I think the experience here is awesome. Let me scroll through a few of these just to see if you want to touch on any of them, Bo. Obviously, I think we talked about all this stuff in the beginning, and even maybe before you take it, Bo, like for the Freight Flex guys, like before you had this, were you experiencing these phone-based identity frauds and these different things?
Yeah, I mean, that one's a little bit harder for us to speak on, because we actually do a lot of our, confirmations, communication with our carriers. 90% of it is through email interaction as far as booking shipments go.
Yeah.
We, of course, are verifying a lot through phone, but we haven't experienced a lot of phone-based identity fraud.
Yeah, I think that's probably the norm. Everything's getting sent through email, and hopefully for your infrastructure, hopefully through one place, right? So you're not as susceptible to it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, while you're looking, Sean, I'll provide some color on this particular fraud vector, phone-based identity fraud. We have the ability for folks that want to, if you have a VoIP, we can plug into the VoIP, right? And we're going to, depending on what we know about the inbound number, we can send it off into purgatory where it just rings forever because we know it's a fraudulent phone number, or we can route it to the appropriate folks on your team. But we see, when we go back and run audits, we see anywhere from 2 to 9% of inbound phone calls are fraudulent, or coming from a fraudulent or flagged contact. And so when I say they're trying to get you off the phone, or off the screen rather, it's that they're going to call over the top and say, yeah, it's me, I'm with this. Yeah, send the right con to this legitimate email, right? That they'll give you the legitimate known public email because they're sitting in it on the back end, and they're trying to route your rate cons into that. And also worth noting, we've heard there's someone right now calling around pretending to be Highway and say, hey, give me your code. I just sent you a code. And that's happening like this week. We're getting a lot of inbounds like, hey, I'm sorry, I gave him a code, I thought it was you. And so just a reminder that, number one, we will never ask you for a code over the phone, just to get that PSA out now. But number two, I mean, they're hitting brokers as much as they're hitting carriers. You guys are both getting it. They're going to pretend to be us. They'll pretend to be Tai. They'll pretend to be shipper, FMCSA, whoever it is. But the goal here, again, just get you off the screen and see if they can lull you into a false sense of security with some data points and make you slip up.
Yeah. And we'll, as we kind of go through this, I know the goal for Freight Flex, obviously about a year ago, to your point, is retraining your whole team on sort of a new infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about how, these two products are working together to keep your team moving quickly, feeling safe with what they're doing? And this is just a screenshot of Tai. You don't necessarily have to reference it, but yeah. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Highway and Tai are communicating in and out. So anything that's, I think Tai is being updated at something like every 5 minutes. It might even be less than that from Highway. So all of the carrier information, whether it's an active carrier, enabled, disabled, blocked, whatever it might be, even some rating tools, insurance, of course, and all of that front end vetting is transferring over to our Tai system to help us on the front end. But then Speaking more on this load lock portion of it. So when we go to send a rate con through Tai, we don't have to go to our Outlook inbox at all anymore. We can do everything through Tai here, and it communicates directly over to Highway. And so we're going to a drop-down screen from the truckload quoting page or whatever way you're sending a rate con, whether you're clicked in the load or wherever it might be. And we're selecting that carrier's DOT email that automatically populates in there for that associated carrier that you have on the shipment. We're selecting that DOT email. You can automatically CC your tracking team, whatever brokers associated with it there. You can even, write up your own script down at the bottom in the body of the email. And you're sending that off with the confirmation as a link in that email, and it's the Highway login link. And so when you send that off through Tai, the carrier is automatically getting that as long as they click that link and they're able to log into their Highway login, they can access the rate confirmation securely from there.
Yeah. What was that process doing in the retraining, right? Like when you had to go through like getting your team all on board and a little bit of a new flow for them. But I mean, what was that like? Was it seamless? Did it take a while?
Yeah. I mean, it really didn't. It honestly was one of the easier ones that we've had to roll out. And I think the reason for it is because it's such a good product and that it was so important to our team that they didn't have to worry about it anymore. Before I was coming on this call, I was talking to some of the guys on the floor and I was joking. I was like, hey, they need a guest speaker on here. And one of the guys was like, I'll jump on there. I'll tell them about load lock. I'll tell them about single DOT through load lock. And now we're able to send that through Tai and everything. So yeah, I mean, the guys like that one really wasn't that hard. It seemed like it would have been because you have all of that information where you're negotiating with a carrier and you're talking about the lane details and everything in an email, and then you're switching over to a different email chain. And so it takes a little bit more work on the front end, but it's absolutely worth it.
I love that. And I'll tell you too, when this rolled out, we expected a lot more carrier pushback just because we are now inserting a new element to it. But these poor carriers, like you talked about earlier, like they're getting scammed just as much. And so if they're getting a fake rate con, well, they just wasted a lot of time, money, and effort. And so we've actually had a lot of positive inbounds that have helped us clean up our process too and what they go through. But it's a way more secure environment for a carrier now. They can sit inside of Highway and see all of their rate cons that they've got coming in, and they know it's legitimate. So it is one of those cool moments where we get to serve both sides of the transaction here, because fraud hits everybody, just not always equally. These carriers have a much tighter budget than a full-on brokerage typically does. So I loved your commentary then that your team's using it. The goal is to make it as in flow as we can, and the Tai team has done a fantastic job to just insert a little bit of security without disrupting the entire flow.
For sure. Yeah. The last thing we want to be doing at Tai is adding something that makes the process feel clunky, or it's not like it should feel like if something's been working for you, we want to disrupt it as little as possible. But to Bo's point earlier, trying to keep you on on the screen, right? And instead of being off the screen and then you're moving too quickly. And I mean, the old way of doing things is you got a lot of screens open, right? And you've got load boards over here, and you might have compliance over there, and you're mainly working out of your email, right? And then, but as I do think that some of the brokerages that do the best job across the board, especially with doing volume without getting caught in fraud, are the ones that they train their team well. And when they tell them they need to either move fast and safe, they give them the right tools, right? They give them the right process, they give them the right tools to do it. And the worst ones are the ones that get really they kind of point the finger a lot. And they're always telling their team hey, don't post on the load board so much, but they don't give them an easy way to vet the carrier, find the right carrier, right? So it becomes I get what you're telling me, man, but I got the load covered. I'm almost out of breath with how much jumping around I'm doing. And that's when people are most susceptible to these schemes. So.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, we hear that a lot too. So just from our broker partners is that it's almost a recruiting tool at this point, because there will be a time in the not too distant future where, folks like FreightFlex will be standing head and shoulders above the others because they've adopted the tools that make it easier for the broker to go fast, right? Let you run as quickly as you can, Whereas others would be like, you're still making me make check calls. I got to look at FMCSA. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I got loads to cover. So it's awesome to see the adoption on our customers like this, because it allows everybody just to run fast.
Right.
Yeah. I guess as we round it out here, Talbot and Reed, what are, I guess, some of the goals that you would want to set, that you would recommend people set in place in terms of measuring success for, preventing freight fraud? Like, what would you recommend to some folks that are just trying to think about, like, where do I start? How do I implement some stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. It's just been so long ago since it's like, if you haven't done a demo, you need to do a demo, because what we talked about was kind of the high level overview of what's going on, but you want to see what Highway actually is doing behind the scenes, checking IP addresses, checking FMCSA data. You want to see how load lock works. You want to see the products that they offer, and we wanted to partner with somebody who's continually looking at what the next freight fraud vector is. And a lot of brokers use Highway today. I mean, I would say the vast majority use Highway today, but somebody else out there in the network has found something that's new, and then they introduce it to Highway, and then they get the opportunity to try to come up with a solution for that. So I would just say, demo that stuff and kind of see if it's right for your organization. I'm sure it is. Even if you're a contract-based broker, contract-based, where you work with the same carriers every day, you'd be surprised what you would find in that. And then, we've taken an approach of basically listening to there's a lot of tech that comes out in freight. Came out, it used to be a ton 2 years ago, and then it stopped, and now a bunch of new tech's coming out with AI and just different things that we look at outside of Tai and Highway is like, listen to some of these guys, because they have solutions that you would be surprised of. You don't have to implement all of them. I know Tal said he's like, all I do is come to him with tech stuff, and sorry, Tal, that's what I do. But, some pretty cool stuff out there if we can afford it. And, we just want to basically plug for FreightFlex is like, I don't want to lose a customer from this stuff. It can be a whole nother situation why we lose a customer, but a rate, whatever, but it better not be because of a process that we can fix on our own. That's our own problem. So we look at ourselves all the time and make sure that we're doing things the right way.
Yeah. Tal, anything to add to that in terms of implementing the process and what that's been like?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're always just looking where we have holes, where we have any, where our operations team is taking a lot of time to do something, any type of automation that we can bring into our organization, if it's AI related, whatever it might be, anybody that can say anything, any product that can save us more time as a company, and our operation, our sales team can have more transactions because of that. That's what we're choosing to do. So I would just encourage anybody to look at where you have issues. Where is stuff falling through the crack, or where is your team spending too much time on stuff, and try to identify what products out there can help you the most.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think for Bo and I'm sure, like most folks, like we're selling tech products. So people, like, you can be a little hesitant, like, yeah, of course I'm saying you can plug all that into your TMS and automate it and move it faster. I think that's how some folks take it. But I think the reason Highway and Tai have partnered so well together, and why we're both companies are seeing so much growth, is personally, I think we both companies, in talking to their culture, is we're kind of sick of the legacy providers not doing enough to add value. And so there is a lot of companies out there who I think that their strategy is to kind of continue to just squeeze revenue out of brokers, whereas like we're really, really trying to make sure that we're helping with these items. I know that there's a lot of passion internally at Tai in terms of not just the tech, but how we support you and making sure that you can move fast. I hate to see, and I feel for the trucking companies too, because I've worked in both markets, and it's low margin. You have to be able to do volume. Insurance costs are crazy, right? And there's all these, like, because it's such a highly competitive space, the margin squeeze isn't going anywhere. The fraud thing's not going anywhere. And it's like, all of these things, like the organizations around it, they're getting they're trying to get just as sophisticated as the tech that we now have in the broker market, right? So, yeah. Bo, go ahead, and if you want to round any of this out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw a lot of really good questions in the chat while we're going through this. I'll go through those after this and make sure I circle up with the folks that reached out directly. We had some really good things that we could go a whole nother hour to double click on. But I think from our perspective, from where Highway stands, like I mentioned earlier, when we came onto the scene, it was born a lot of, okay, there's this wave of fraud that's hitting and going to hit and only going to get worse. And so our goal from the jump has to get in there and be able to tell you, who is this carrier, right? Who are you actually talking to? What capability does he actually have? And so that's kind of the guiding light for us, is just carrier identity throughout the entirety of what we do for folks like FreightFlex and others, is to loop that into every phase of your business. And so our goal is not to have you, stack different, piece together different things. We are going where our customers are leading us. It's, hey, can you guys do this? Man, if you guys could do this, hey, I'm spending a lot of money over here. Can you make that secure and cheaper? That's our goal, is to keep going where our customers are leading us. Because the brokerage market, I mean, you are who we serve. I mean, it is what we wake up every day. And the beautiful part of that is that from a carrier perspective, they're not our customers, but we can add a whole lot of value for them as well, to try to help out what they're doing day in, day out, as folks are aggressively targeting them as well. So I appreciate you guys coming on here and having the conversation, guys. That was awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Reed, Tal, thank you so much for being on, because I think it's brokers want to hear from folks like you who have implemented these strategies. It's working. You're successful, even though it's an extra line item. It's also helping you guys move faster in the spot quote market, and it's a tough market for everybody. And I really do feel for brokers, and I think a lot of the ones we see in the market that haven't made it through the last couple of years, they are moving a little too quick and not necessarily looking to improve some of these processes. I mean, if you're already running on pretty thin margins and you lose a load and then you lose that customer because of it, I mean, there's a lot of brokers out there that could be like that one customer. That's it. Now we're screwed. It's already been a tough market. We've been toughing it out for 2 years, right? So I have a lot of passion in just trying to help brokers through all of this. And so I hope everybody on here got a lot out of this. I guess, obviously FreightFlex is a great company. If anybody is like, hey, I want to get over there where they're actually spending money on tech and trying to empower their employees, like, where can they find FreightFlex? Or if there's any shippers on here that want to.
Yeah, we're growing. Come find us. If you, come find us. You can reach out on our website at freightflex.com. There's a contact us form. We're happy to do it that way. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Reed Rivers, and just come find us. We'd love to grow our team with some great brokers who are just missing the support from their brokerage today. We have that support for you, and you'll enjoy it, I promise.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously on the side here, we have a book a demo with Highway. I'm sure Bo and his team would love to walk you through. I saw some really cool stuff at our user conference that they showed us in terms of how they go about vetting these carriers and creating carrier profile. And to Talbot's point, I think that's a great place to start. Just get it. If nothing else, you learn something. You learn something about what's going on and how you could potentially vet these carriers out.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. And you can go to tai-software.com if you want to hear more about Tai. We wanted to keep this pretty focused on freight fraud and highway, but obviously all these different tools that FreightFlex is using integrate through Tai. We make it very seamless for you. We want brokers to be able to move fast. So thank you everybody for joining, and thanks again to the whole panel who jumped on here with the answers you gave.
Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.